A single fork crashing against porcelain. That's all it took to shatter the silence in Manhattan's most expensive dining room. What happened next? A 32-year-old billionaire lost his temper in Italian. A waitress nobody noticed suddenly became the most dangerous person in the room, and a business deal worth $500 million exploded into warfare. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. The thing about rage is that it doesn't always announce itself with volume. Sometimes it arrives quiet, cold, precise, the kind that makes grown men check the exits. Adrian Vale's fury was exactly that type, and Victor Sterling had just triggered every last bit of it. You think I'm stupid? Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried across the entire private dining room of Celestine, the kind of restaurant where reservations required 6 months' notice and connections that money alone couldn't buy. His Italian accent thickened as his control started slipping. You sit here, in my city, and insult me with this garbage? The fork hit the plate with a sound like a gunshot. Conversations at nearby tables died mid-sentence. Victor Sterling didn't flinch. The 58-year-old American leaned back in his chair, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile never wavering. Adrian, I think you're misunderstanding the... Misunderstanding? Adrian switched to Italian, the words pouring out rapid fire, his hands moving in sharp gestures that made the 2 security guards by the door straighten up. You come here with a contract designed to gut my company like a fish, and you expect me to smile and sign? Do you think because my wife is dead I've become an idiot? That I'll just hand over everything her family built? Victor's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, so brief that most people would have missed it. But Adrian caught it. And so did someone else. Lily Moreau was standing 3 feet away with a water pitcher, trying very hard to be invisible. It was a skill she'd perfected over the past 18 months working at Celestine. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant keeping her job. Invisible meant another month of her mother's medical bills getting paid. But right now, invisible meant she was close enough to see the contract sitting on the table between the 2 men. Close enough to read the clause on page 7. Close enough to understand exactly why Adrian Vale was about to either walk out or throw a punch. Mr. Vale, Victor said, switching to English with exaggerated patience, I understand you're emotional. Losing your wife was a tragedy, and raising a son alone while running a company. Don't! Adrian's voice could have frozen nitrogen. Don't you dare bring up my son! Lily's hand trembled slightly. The water pitcher felt suddenly very heavy. She should step back. She should disappear into the kitchen. She should do literally anything except what she was about to do. But that clause on page 7 wasn't just corporate theft. It was elegant, sophisticated fraud. The kind that took years to build and seconds to spring. The kind that had destroyed her own family when she was 19 years old. The kind that Victor Sterling's father had used to bankrupt her grandfather's textile empire and drive her father to an early grave. Lily set down the water pitcher with hands that barely shook at all. Then she did something she hadn't done in over a decade, outside of her cramped studio apartment. She spoke. La clausola 7, she said quietly. The Italian felt strange in her mouth after so long. Paragrafo 3. È una trappola. Every head in the immediate area turned toward her. Adrian's dark eyes locked onto her face with an intensity that made her stomach drop. Victor Sterling's carefully maintained expression cracked just enough to show something ugly underneath. Excuse me? Victor's tone could have stripped paint. Did the waitress just... Clause 7? Paragraph 3, Lily repeated, this time in English, her voice steadier than she felt. She pointed at the contract without touching it. The subsidiary transfer clause. It's designed to trigger a cascade default across your entire European holdings within 18 months. By the time the mechanism activates, you won't own your company anymore. He will. The silence that followed was so complete that Lily could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice was screaming that she'd just committed career suicide. Celestine didn't tolerate staff who spoke out of turn. She'd be fired before the entrees arrived. But Adrian Vale wasn't looking at her like she was a waitress who'd overstepped. He was looking at her like she'd just pulled him back from the edge of a cliff. Chi say? He asked quietly. Who are you? Nobody, Lily said automatically. Then because honesty seems safer than lies at this point. Someone who's seen this exact playbook before. Victor Sterling stood up so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. This is absurd. Adrian, your employee is... She doesn't work for me, Adrian said, not taking his eyes off Lily. She works for the restaurant, which means she has no reason to lie to protect me. He picked up the contract, flipped to page 7, and read the clause she'd referenced. His jaw tightened with each line. When he looked up, the cold fury had transformed into something sharper, clearer. You need to leave, he told Victor. Adrian, be reasonable. Now. The word came out flat and absolute. Before I have security throw you out. And trust me, Victor, I will make sure every person in this restaurant knows exactly why. Victor Sterling's face turned an interesting shade of red. For a moment, Lily thought he might actually take a swing at Adrian, but then he seemed to remember where he was and who was watching. The other diners were being discreet about it, but every eye in the room was on their table now. This isn't over, Victor said, grabbing his briefcase. No, Adrian agreed. It's not. But the next time we meet, it won't be over dinner. It'll be in court. Victor left without another word, though the look he shot at Lily on his way out promised nothing good. The security guards followed him at a polite distance, making sure he actually made it to the exit. Lily realized she was still standing there like an idiot, her empty hands hovering uselessly at her sides. She should apologize. She should explain. She should... Sit down, bitch, Adrian said. I'm working. I can't... Sit. It wasn't a request. Adrian pulled out Victor's abandoned chair and gestured to it. Please. Lily sat, mostly because her knees were shaking and she wasn't sure they'd hold her up much longer. Up close, Adrian Vale was even more intimidating than the tabloids made him seem. He wasn't classically handsome. His nose had been broken at least once, his jaw was too sharp, and there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. But there was an intensity to him that made it hard to look away, like staring at a storm rolling in across the ocean. What's your name? He asked. Lily Moreau. And how does a waitress at Celestine know enough about international corporate law to spot a subsidiary transfer trap? Lily hesitated. The truth was complicated and painful, and not something she talked about with anyone, let alone billionaire strangers. But something about the way Adrian was looking at her, not suspicious, just curious, made the words come easier. My grandfather owned Moreau Textiles, she said quietly. It was one of the largest fabric manufacturers in France. When I was 19, Victor Sterling's father orchestrated a hostile takeover using almost the exact same mechanism you were about to sign. By the time my grandfather realized what was happening, it was too late. We lost everything. The company, the properties, the reputation. My father had a stroke 6 months later. He didn't survive it. Adrian's expression shifted into something that looked almost like recognition. Moreau Textiles, I remember. The acquisition was brutal, even by Sterling Sr. standards. He paused. I'm sorry. Everyone was sorry, Lily said, and couldn't quite keep the bitterness out of her voice. Sorry doesn't pay medical bills. Is that why you're working here? Medical bills? Lily nodded. My mother has MS progressive. The treatments are expensive. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those dark, intense eyes. Then he pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. What's your schedule like tomorrow? He asked. Lily blinked. I work the lunch shift, 11 to 5. Not anymore. He showed her his phone screen. It was an email to the restaurant's general manager marked urgent. You're taking a personal day. My office. 10 a.m. I'll send you the address. I don't understand. You just saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life, Adrian said bluntly. That contract would have destroyed everything I've spent the last 3 years protecting for my son. So now I need to know exactly how deep Sterling's fraud goes, and you're the only person I've met who can see through it. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. 10 a.m., Miss Moreau. Don't be late. He was gone before Lily could form a response, leaving her sitting alone at the table with a half-empty water pitcher and a head full of questions. Her manager, Richard, appeared approximately 10 seconds later, his face the color of boiled lobster. What the hell did you just do? He hissed. I think I might have just quit, Lily said weakly. Richard looked like he wanted to yell. Then he looked at the email on his own phone. Apparently Adrian had CC'd him, and his expression did a complicated journey through several emotions before landing on resignation. "You're lucky Vale is one of our biggest investors," he muttered. "Anyone else, and you'd be fired. As it is," he sighed, "take your personal day. Try not to get yourself killed by getting involved with billionaires." Lily made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot, her mind spinning. What had she just done? Adrian Vale wasn't just any billionaire. He was famously ruthless, famously private, and famously unforgiving of people who wasted his time. And she'd just agreed to walk into his office tomorrow morning with nothing but a decade-old grudge and some pattern recognition skills. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was... Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Vale Tower, 58th floor. Security will be expecting you. A.V." Another text followed immediately. "And Miss Moreau?" "Thank you." Lily stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She smiled. "Dwight's." The next morning, Lily stood outside Vale Tower at 9:45 a.m., seriously considering running away. The building was a steel and glass monument to obscene wealth, jutting into the Manhattan skyline like a middle finger to gravity. She'd walked past it hundreds of times without ever imagining she'd actually go inside. Her reflection in the lobby window showed a nervous 30-year-old woman in her only good dress, a navy blue thing she'd bought for her father's funeral and hadn't worn since. Her dark hair was pulled back in a bun that was already coming loose. She looked exactly like what she was, someone who didn't belong here. "You can do this," she muttered to herself. "He asked you to come. You're not crashing. You were invited." The lobby was even more intimidating than the exterior. Marble floors, impossibly high ceilings, and a security desk staffed by people who looked like they could bench press a sedan. "Lily Moreau," she told the guard, trying to sound confident. "I have an appointment with Mr. Vale." The guard checked his tablet, then gave her a visitor badge and directions to a private elevator. 58th floor, Mr. Vale is expecting you." The elevator ride felt like it lasted approximately 7 years. Lily used the time to practice breathing and remind herself that she could still leave. She could walk out right now, go back to Celestine, apologize to Richard, and pretend last night never happened. But then she thought about that clause in Victor Sterling's contract, the same elegant trap that had destroyed her family. And she thought about Adrian Vale's son, a little boy she'd never met, but who deserved better than having his inheritance stolen by the same corporate predator who'd killed her father. The elevator doors opened. Adrian Vale's office wasn't an office. It was a command center. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, showing the city spread out like a game board. The furniture was minimal and expensive. A massive desk made of dark wood, leather chairs that probably cost more than Lily made in 6 months, and walls covered with what looked like original artwork. Adrian was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian to someone who was clearly trying his patience. When he saw Lily, he held up one finger. "Wait," and finished the conversation with what sounded like a threat wrapped in professional courtesy. "My apologies," he said, setting down the phone. "Crisis in the Florence office. Again." He gestured to one of the chairs. "Please, sit. Coffee?" Yes. Thank you." Adrian poured 2 cups from a French press on a side table, then sat across from her instead of behind his desk. It was a small gesture, but it made the space feel less like an interrogation room. "I did some research on you last night," he said without preamble. "Lily Moreau, graduated top of your class from Sorbonne with a degree in international economics. Published 2 papers on corporate acquisition patterns before you were 21. Then you disappeared from academia completely. No publications, no conferences, no trace, until you showed up in New York 18 months ago working at Celestine." Lily's coffee cup rattled slightly as she set it down. "You had me investigated." "I had my assistant spend 20 minutes on Google," Adrian corrected. "You're not exactly hiding. You're just invisible." He tilted his head. "Why?" "Because invisible is safe," Lily said quietly. "After we lost everything, my mother and I had nothing. No money, no connections, no one willing to hire a Moreau. We came to New York because it was far enough away that people didn't immediately connect me to the scandal. I got a job waiting tables because it paid enough to cover rent and medical bills and didn't require explaining my resume gap. You buried yourself alive to survive. I did what I had to do. Lily met his eyes. Not all of us have the luxury of fighting back. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What if you did?" "Did what?" "Have the luxury, the resources, the backing." He leaned forward. "Victor Sterling's father destroyed your family with fraud. Now Victor is trying to do the same thing to mine. We have a common enemy. We could help each other." Lily's heart was racing. "I'm a waitress with a degree I haven't used in 10 years. What exactly do you think I can do?" "You spotted that trap in under 30 seconds, Adrian said bluntly. "I have an entire legal team that missed it. That tells me your mind works differently than theirs. Better, at least for this." He pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I need someone who can think like Sterling, who understands his patterns, who knows where to look for the knives before they're in my back." "You want me to analyze his business?" "I want you to help me dismantle it," Adrian corrected. "Piece by piece, until there's nothing left for him to use against anyone else." Lily stared at him. "That's not business. That's revenge." "Yes," Adrian agreed simply. "It is, and you can tell me you're not interested in that, but we both know I'd be wrong." He wasn't wrong. The thought of taking down Victor Sterling made something hot and fierce unfurl in Lily's chest, something she'd buried for so long she'd almost forgotten it existed. "But I can't afford to lose my job at Celestine," she said carefully. "My mother's care costs $4,000 a month. I can't—" "You'll work for me," Adrian interrupted. "Full time. Starting salary is $200,000 a year, plus benefits that will cover your mother's medical expenses completely. You'll have an office here, access to whatever resources you need, and my full backing." Lily's brain stuttered to a halt. 200? "If you help me take down Sterling, there'll be a bonus," Adrian continued, as if he hadn't just offered her more money than she'd made in the last 5 years combined. "A substantial one. Enough to set your mother up for life. Enough to rebuild your own life however you want." It was too much, too fast, too good to be true. "Why?" Lily asked. "Why me? You could hire investigators, forensic accountants, corporate lawyers. I have all of those," Adrian said. "What I don't have is someone who understands what Sterling is. You lived through it. You know how he thinks. And—" He hesitated, which was the first time Lily had seen him show anything resembling uncertainty. "You spoke up when you had everything to lose. That tells me you have integrity. That's rarer than you'd think." Lily's hands were shaking. This was insane. She barely knew this man. She had no idea if she could actually do what he was asking. But when was the last time anyone had looked at her and seen potential instead of invisibility? When was the last time someone had offered her a chance to fight back? "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'll do it." Adrian's expression shifted into something that might have been relief. "Good. We start immediately. I need you to—" His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his whole demeanor changed, softening in a way that took years off his face. "One moment," he said, then answered. "Ciao, piccolo." His Italian was gentle now, nothing like the sharp anger from last night. "Sì, papa è qui. Che cosa è successo?" Lily couldn't understand the response, but she could hear the young voice on the other end, high-pitched, worried about something. Va bene, Adrian soothed. "Chiama la nonna. Lei sa dove sono le tue scarpe. Io ti amo. Ciao." He hung up and ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly tired. "My son, 8 years old and already losing things faster than I can replace them." "You're raising him alone," Lily said. It wasn't a question. His mother died when he was 4, Adrian said quietly. "Cancer. Fast and brutal and completely unfair." He looked at the photo on his desk. A dark-haired little boy with his father's intense eyes, laughing at something off camera. "Everything I do is for him. The company, the fights, all of it. He deserves to inherit something clean, something he can be proud of." And just like that, Lily understood. This wasn't about money or power or even revenge. Not really. It was about protection. About making sure the people you loved didn't get destroyed by the same machines that ground down everyone else. It was about fighting back for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. "I lost my father because Victor Sterling's family wanted to be richer," Lily said quietly. "Your son shouldn't have to lose his inheritance for the same reason." Adrian met her eyes. "No, he shouldn't." They sat in silence for a moment, two people connected by different losses but the same anger. Then Adrian stood and opened the folder on his desk. Sterling's company has 17 subsidiaries across 8 countries. We'll start with the European holdings. I need you to map out every acquisition he's made in the last 5 years. Look for patterns. Find the weak points. How much time do I have? As long as you need, but Sterling knows I'm coming for him now. He'll be scrambling to cover his tracks. Lily stood and took the folder. It was heavy, filled with financial documents and corporate filings and years of carefully hidden fraud. Where do I work? She asked. Adrian showed her to an office 3 doors down from his own. It was smaller, but still impossibly nice by Lily's standards. Windows overlooking the city, a desk with dual monitors, and a door that actually closed. This is yours, Adrian said. My assistant will get you set up with building access and system credentials. If you need anything, ask. No question is too small, no request too much. Lily set the folder down on her new desk and had to resist the urge to pinch herself. 24 hours ago, she'd been invisible. Now she had an office in one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings and a billionaire trusting her to help dismantle his enemy. Adrian? She said as he turned to leave. He stopped, looking back. Thank you, Lily said, for taking a chance on me. Adrian's expression was hard to read. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly. Sterling doesn't lose gracefully. Neither do I, Lily said. For the first time since they'd met, Adrian Vale smiled. It was quick and fierce and made him look almost dangerous. Good, he said. Then we'll get along just fine. 3 days later, Lily sat surrounded by spreadsheets that made her eyes hurt and financial documents that made her furious. This is insane, she muttered, highlighting another suspicious transaction. This is absolutely insane. Victor Sterling wasn't just committing fraud, he was running a masterclass in it. Shell companies nested inside holding corporations, money bouncing between offshore accounts, and acquisition patterns that only made sense if you mapped them over a timeline and realized they were systematically targeting vulnerable companies at their weakest moments. It was elegant. It was sophisticated. It was exactly what his father had done to her family, just scaled up to an international level. Lily added another connection to her growing chart. She'd been working 12-hour days since starting, barely sleeping, living on coffee and the weird expensive snacks that appeared in the break room. Adrian's assistant, a terrifyingly competent woman named Patricia, had tried to convince her to go home, but Lily couldn't stop. Every document she analyzed was another piece of the puzzle, another weapon she could use. Knock, knock. Lily looked up to find Adrian leaning against her doorframe, holding 2 takeout bags that smelled incredible. When did you last eat? He asked. Lily glanced at her computer clock. 7 hours ago? That's what I thought. Adrian walked in and started unpacking containers on her desk. Thai food, still steaming. Patricia said you've been here since 6 a.m. It's almost 9 p.m. I found something, Lily said, pulling up one of her charts. Look at this pattern. Every company Sterling acquired in the last 3 years had the same vulnerability. Family-owned businesses going through succession planning. He waits until the founder is sick or dying, then makes an offer that seems generous but includes these hidden mechanisms that... Lily. She stopped, realizing Adrian was looking at her with something that might have been concern. Eat first, he said gently. Then show me what you found. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The food was good. Better than good. Lily hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating. You're doing this the way I work, Adrian observed. Like if you stop moving, everything falls apart. Says the man who's in the office at 9 p.m. I have a son to take home to. What's your excuse? Lily didn't have a good answer for that. The truth was, she'd spent so long being invisible that having purpose felt addictive. Like if she stopped working, she'd disappear again. Tell me what you found, Adrian said after a while. Lily walked him through the pattern she'd discovered. The way Sterling targeted businesses at their most vulnerable. The mechanisms he used to strip assets while maintaining plausible deniability. The offshore accounts where the real money disappeared. Adrian listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each revelation. He's been doing this for decades, Lily finished. Since before his father died, they were running it together, building an empire on other people's grief. Can we prove it? Most of it, yes. Some of it's too well hidden, but if we can get access to his internal communications, his emails. Lily pulled up another chart. There's a paper trail, there has to be. Fraud this complex requires coordination, people talking to each other, making decisions. We'd need someone on the inside, Adrian said thoughtfully. Someone Sterling trust. They looked at each other. That's dangerous, Lily said slowly. Yes. If Sterling finds out, whoever does it could end up dead or in prison or both. Yes. But it's the only way to get what we need. Probably. Lily took a breath. I'll do it. Absolutely not, Adrian said immediately. You're not going anywhere near Sterling. He's already seen you. He knows you helped me. Then who? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Let me make some calls. I know people who owe me favors. Unpleasant people, but useful. How unpleasant? The kind who don't ask questions when I need something illegal done quietly. Adrian caught her expression and added, I'm not a good person, Lily. I'm just better than Sterling. Lily thought about that. About the man who'd hired her on instinct, who called his son every evening, who worked himself to exhaustion protecting his family's legacy, who was willing to cross legal and moral lines to take down someone who deserved it. I think you're better than you believe, she said quietly. Adrian looked at her like she'd said something in a foreign language. Then his phone rang, the specific ringtone he'd set for his son. Ciao, Marco, he answered, and his whole demeanor shifted again into that gentle father voice. Si, papà viene a casa presto. Hai fatto I compiti? Lily went back to her charts while Adrian finished the call, but she found herself listening to the rhythm of his Italian, the warmth in his voice when he talked to his son. This was the man Sterling was trying to destroy. Not the ruthless billionaire, but the tired father who just wanted to protect his kid. She thought about her own father, how he'd worked himself to death trying to save what Sterling's father had taken, how he'd never had the chance to fight back. I'm going to destroy him, Lily said when Adrian hung up. Adrian looked at her. Sterling? Yes. Lily turned back to her computer. Not because you're paying me. Not even for revenge. Not really. Because people like him think they can take everything from people like us and will just disappear. Be invisible. Go away quietly. And, Lily smiled sharp and fierce, I'm done being invisible. 2 weeks into working for Adrian Vale, Lily discovered that billionaires kept truly terrible hours. It was 2:47 a.m. when her phone buzzed with a message that simply read, 58th floor. Now. Bring coffee. She'd been asleep for exactly 90 minutes, dreaming about spreadsheets that turned into snakes. The metaphor wasn't subtle even by dream standards. Lily pulled on jeans and a sweater, grabbed her laptop bag, and headed out into the New York night. The streets were quieter at this hour, populated mostly by people ending their evenings or starting very early mornings. She stopped at the only place open near Vale Tower, a 24-hour deli run by a Korean family who never questioned why she was buying coffee at 3 a.m. The building's night security knew her by now. They waved her through without checking ID. Adrian's office lights were blazing when she stepped off the elevator. He was standing at the windows, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing sharply at something only he could see. Non mi interessa cosa dice, he snapped. Trova un modo o trova un altro lavoro. He hung up without waiting for a response and turned to face Lily. His tie was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and he looked like he hadn't slept in approximately 3 days. Bad news? Lily asked, handing him one of the coffees. Sterling just bought Castellane Industries, Adrian said flatly. A textile manufacturer based in Lyon, family-owned for 4 generations. He made the offer yesterday. They accepted this morning. Lily's stomach dropped. Castellane? But that's the same pattern, same vulnerability, same playbook. Adrian took a long drink of coffee like it was whiskey. The founder died 6 months ago. His daughters were fighting over succession. Sterling offered them twice what the company was worth, and they took it because they didn't know any better. He's going to gut it. Within 18 months? Yes. Strip the assets, sell the real estate, liquidate the inventory. Then he'll close it down and blame market conditions. Adrian's jaw tightened. 300 employees will lose their jobs. Another family legacy gets turned into cash for Sterling's offshore accounts. Lily set down her coffee and opened her laptop. Show me the acquisition documents. They spent the next hour going through every page of the Castellan purchase agreement. It was exactly what Lily had feared. The same elegant trap, the same hidden mechanisms, the same inevitable destruction dressed up as a generous offer. We could warn them, Lily said, even though she knew it was too late. They already signed. Sterling owns them now. Adrian's voice was bitter. By the time they realize what happened, he'll have already started the asset transfers. Then we use it as evidence. This is fresh. The mechanisms haven't triggered yet. If we can document the pattern before it plays out, it won't be enough for a criminal case. Corporate fraud is nearly impossible to prosecute when it's this sophisticated. We need something bigger, something undeniable. Lily leaned back in her chair, frustrated. They'd been collecting evidence for 2 weeks and had built a damning case against Sterling's business practices. But Adrian was right. Proving that his business model was predatory wasn't the same as proving it was criminal. Corporate law had too many gray areas, too many loopholes for expensive lawyers to exploit. What about his internal communications? Lily asked. You said you were making calls, finding someone who could get inside. Adrian's expression shifted into something complicated. I found someone. He starts tomorrow. Who? His name is Marcus Chen, former corporate investigator, current freelancer with flexible ethics. He's going to approach Sterling's head of acquisitions with a fake background and a very real skill set. If Sterling hires him, Marcus will have access to their internal systems. And if Sterling checks his references too carefully, they'll hold up. Marcus is good at this. Too good, probably. Adrian rubbed his eyes. But it's risky. If Sterling catches him, Marcus goes to prison, and we get nothing. How much are you paying him? Enough that he's willing to take the risk. Adrian looked at her. I told you I'm not a good person, Lily. Good people don't hire corporate spies. Good people also don't let monsters keep destroying families. Lily closed her laptop. When do we hear from him? Could be days. Could be weeks. Marcus has to make it look natural. A rushed approach will spook Sterling's people. The waiting, Lily was discovering, was the hardest part. They had momentum now, direction, purpose. But corporate warfare moved at the speed of paperwork and careful planning. Nothing happened quickly when you were trying to dismantle an empire. Go home, Adrian said, startling her out of her thoughts. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. What about you? I have calls to make. Europe's waking up soon. Lily gathered her things but hesitated at the door. Adrian? When did you last sleep? He gave her a look that was equal parts amused and exhausted. When did you? 90 minutes before you texted me. Then I'm doing better than you think. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. Lily left him there, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline, and tried not to think about how alone he looked. 3 days later, Lily was deep in analyzing Sterling's real estate holdings when Patricia appeared in her doorway looking uncharacteristically flustered. There's someone here to see you, she said. She's insistent. Before Lily could ask who, a woman in her early 60s swept past Patricia like she owned the building. She was elegant in that effortless European way, wearing a perfectly tailored coat and carrying herself with the kind of confidence that came from old money and older names. Lily Moreau, the woman said. It wasn't a question. I am Victoria Vale, Adrian's mother-in-law. Lily stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her coffee. Mrs. Vale, I didn't know that my son-in-law had hired my daughter's replacement? Victoria's smile was sharp. Yes, well, Adrian is very good at keeping secrets when he wants to. The words hit like a slap. Lily felt her face flush. I'm not anyone's replacement. I'm just... Relax, dear. I'm not here to attack you. Victoria settled into one of Lily's chairs without waiting for an invitation. I'm here because I want to know who exactly has gotten Adrian so worked up that he's barely sleeping and forgetting to eat. He told you about Sterling? Adrian tells me nothing, but I have lunch with my grandson every Tuesday, and Marco is much more talkative than his father. He mentioned that Papa is fighting with a bad man who hurt a nice lady's family. Victoria's eyes were sharp despite her casual tone. I assume you're the nice lady. Lily sat back down slowly. Victor Sterling destroyed my grandfather's business. His father did, actually. Victor's just continuing the tradition. Moreau Textiles, yes, I remember. It was a shame what happened to your family. Vittoria studied her. And now you're helping Adrian take revenge on the son. How very Greek tragedy of you both. It's not just revenge, Lily said, defensive. Sterling's still doing it, still destroying companies, still— I didn't say it was wrong, dear. I said it was Greek tragedy. There's a difference. Vittoria leaned forward. My daughter loved Adrian very much. When she was dying, she made me promise to make sure he didn't disappear into his work and forget to live. I've been failing at that promise for 3 years. Lily didn't know what to say to that. But something's changed recently, Vittoria continued. He's still working obsessively, but he's engaged, present, almost like the man he used to be before cancer took my daughter. She paused. I think that might be because of you. I just work here, Lily said weakly. No one just works for Adrian Vale. He doesn't do casual employment. Vittoria stood, smoothing her coat. I won't keep you. I just wanted to see for myself who you were, and to tell you that if you hurt my grandson by breaking his father's heart, I will make your life very difficult. We're not, Lily stumbled over the words. It's not like that. Perhaps not yet, Vittoria smiled, and this time it looked almost kind. But it could be. Adrian hasn't let anyone close since my daughter died. The fact that he's let you in at all is worth noticing. She left before Lily could form a response, leaving behind a faint scent of expensive perfume and a head full of uncomfortable thoughts. Lily tried to focus on her work, but Vittoria's words kept circling back. Adrian hasn't let anyone close. Was that true? They'd been working together for 2 weeks, but their relationship was purely professional, wasn't it? Except they also ate dinner together most nights when they worked late. And Adrian had started asking her opinion on things that had nothing to do with Sterling, business decisions, property, investments, whether Marco should change schools. And yesterday he'd smiled at something she said, and it had felt different from his usual careful expressions. Stop it, Lily muttered to herself. You work for him. That's all this is. But when Adrian appeared in her doorway an hour later holding 2 sandwiches and asking if she wanted to take a break, Lily found herself noticing things she'd been deliberately not noticing. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The way he remembered how she took her coffee. The way his whole demeanor softened when they talked about anything other than Sterling. You okay? Adrian asked, setting down the sandwiches. You look distracted. Your mother-in-law came by. Adrian froze. Vittoria was here? She wanted to meet me. Make sure I wasn't secretly evil, I think. And what did she conclude? That if I hurt Marco by breaking your heart, she'll destroy me. Lily unwrapped her sandwich, not looking at him. I told her that wasn't relevant since we're just working together. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What did she say to that? Perhaps not yet. Lily finally looked up. She thinks there's something here that isn't just professional. Is there? Adrian's voice was careful, neutral. Lily's heart was beating too fast. This was dangerous territory. He was her boss, her employer, the person giving her the first real chance she'd had in over a decade. Getting involved would be stupid and complicated and probably end badly. But she was tired of being careful, tired of making safe choices that left her invisible and alone. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe, if we both wanted there to be. Adrian set down his sandwich. I haven't— He stopped, started again. I loved my wife. Very much. When she died, I promised myself I'd focus on Marco, on the company, on things I could protect and control. That sounds lonely. It was safer than the alternative. Adrian looked at her. But then you walked into my life and ruined all that careful distance I'd built. I ruined it? You spoke up when you had everything to lose. You see patterns no one else notices. You work until you forget to eat. You're brilliant and angry, and you don't let me get away with anything. Adrian's voice dropped. And I can't stop thinking about you. Lily's breath caught. Adrian, I know this is complicated, he continued. I know I'm your boss and this could end badly. And there are probably 20 good reasons why we shouldn't. But I also know that for the first time in 3 years, I feel something other than grief and anger. And that's because of you. They stared at each other across the desk, the air between them charged with possibilities and risks. Your mother-in-law said she'd destroy me if I hurt Marco, Lily said quietly. Vittoria's protective, but she also loved my wife enough to want me to be happy again. That's why she came here today. She wanted to give her approval. Did I pass? You're still alive, so yes. Adrian smiled slightly. Vittoria doesn't make threats she doesn't mean. Lily laughed despite herself. Then she sobered. I don't know how to do this. The last relationship I had was in college before everything fell apart. I've spent a decade just surviving. I've spent 3 years hiding behind my son and my work, Adrian said, so we're both disasters. But maybe we could be disasters together. That's the worst romantic pitch I've ever heard. I'm out of practice. Adrian stood and walked around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. Lily Moreau, I would like to take you to dinner, somewhere that isn't this office. Somewhere we can talk about things that aren't Victor Sterling or corporate fraud. What would we talk about? I have no idea. That's the terrifying part. He held out his hand. But I'd like to find out. Lily looked at his hand for a long moment. This was insane. Reckless. Exactly the kind of choice she'd spent years avoiding. She took his hand. Okay, she said. Dinner, but not somewhere fancy. I can't afford another dress and I refuse to show up in my work clothes. I know a place, Adrian said, and his smile was genuine this time. Small, quiet, absolutely no one who will recognize us. Deal? Deal. They stood there, hands still clasped, neither quite willing to let go first. Then Adrian's phone rang with Marco's ringtone and the moment broke. I should take this, he said reluctantly. Go. I need to finish these reports anyway. Adrian answered his phone as he walked back to his office, slipping easily into Italian and that gentle father voice. Lily sat back down and stared at her computer screen without seeing it. What had she just agreed to? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Vittoria. Adrian has my number if you need to reach me. Welcome to the family. Try not to let him work himself to death. Lily laughed and shook her head. Adrian's family was as intense as he was. She was definitely going to need that dinner to process all of this. 4 days later, Marcus Chen made contact. Adrian's phone buzzed during a conference call with his European offices. He glanced at the screen, excused himself, and walked to Lily's office. Marcus got hired, he said without preamble. He starts in Sterling's acquisitions department Monday. Lily closed her laptop. How did he manage it? Apparently, Sterling's head of acquisitions has been looking for someone with Marcus's specific skill set for months. Marcus made himself look like the perfect candidate. Adrian sat down. He'll need time to establish trust before he can start accessing sensitive files. But this is our opening. How long before we get something useful? Weeks. Maybe a month. Marcus knows what we're looking for. Communications about the acquisition strategies, emails discussing the asset transfer mechanisms, anything that proves intent to defraud. Lily felt a mix of relief and anxiety. They were moving forward, but they were also putting someone in real danger. If Sterling figures out what Marcus is doing, Marcus knows the risks. He's been doing this kind of work for years. Adrian paused. But you're right to worry. Sterling's not stupid. We need to be careful. They spent the next hour going over their strategy. Marcus would feed them information in small batches, nothing that would trigger suspicion if Sterling's IT department monitored file access. Lily would analyze each piece, building the case slowly and carefully. It was tedious work, dangerous work, but it was working. That evening, Adrian took Lily to the promised dinner. The restaurant was tucked away in Brooklyn, small and family-owned, with checkered tablecloths and candles that flickered in old wine bottles. Nothing like the places Adrian probably usually ate. My wife and I used to come here, he said as they sat down. Before Marco was born, before the company got so big, when we could still pretend to be normal people. Do you miss that? Lily asked. Every day. Adrian studied the menu even though he clearly knew it by memory. She would have liked you, Elena. She had this way of seeing through people's defenses. You do that too. I'm not trying to replace her. I know. That's part of why I trust you. Adrian set down the menu. Elena made me promise before she died that I wouldn't stop living, that I'd find happiness again. I've been breaking that promise for 3 years. Grief doesn't follow a schedule, Lily said quietly. No, but there's a difference between grieving and hiding. Adrian looked at her.
I've been hiding, using Marco and the company as excuses not to let anyone in. But you didn't ask for permission. You just walked in and made yourself essential. The waiter appeared before Lily could respond, and they ordered food in a strange mix of Italian and English that made the waiter laugh. When they were alone again, Lily said, "Tell me about Marco. All I know is he's 8 and loses his shoes."
Adrian's whole face changed when he talked about his son. The careful control dropped away, replaced by pure unfiltered love. Marco was obsessed with dinosaurs and terrible at soccer and had his mother's laugh. He asked too many questions and had opinions about everything and wanted to be a scientist when he grew up, though that changed weekly. "He sounds wonderful," Lily said when Adrian paused for breath. "He's the best thing in my life, the only pure thing." Adrian's expression softened. "He asked about you yesterday. Wanted to know why Papa was smiling at his phone. What did you tell him?" "That I have a friend who makes me happy." Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. "He said he wants to meet you, if that's okay." Lily's throat tightened. Meeting Marco felt significant in a way that dinner didn't. It meant this was real. It meant she was becoming part of Adrian's actual life, not just his work life. "I'd like that," she said, "but I'm terrible with kids. I don't know what to—" "Just be yourself. Marco's good at reading people. If you're genuine, he'll love you." They ate and talked and laughed, and for a few hours Lily forgot about Sterling and fraud and revenge. She was just a woman having dinner with a man who made her feel seen. When Adrian dropped her off at her apartment building, a 4th-floor walk-up in Queens that was about as far from his penthouse as you could get while still being in New York, he walked her to the door. "Thank you," he said, "for tonight, for agreeing to this despite all the ways it could be a mistake. Are you having second thoughts?" "No, but I'm terrified I'll mess this up." Adrian touched her face gently. "I'm not good at this anymore. The dating thing, the vulnerable thing." "Neither am I," Lily admitted. "We can be terrible at it together." "That's the second worst romantic line I've heard today. I learned from the best." Adrian kissed her then, soft and careful and absolutely terrifying in its gentleness. When he pulled back, Lily's heart was racing. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. "Try to sleep." "You too." "Liar." Lily watched him walk back to his car, an understated sedan driven by someone who was definitely a bodyguard, and felt something shift in her chest. This was dangerous, not just because of the power dynamics or the professional complications, but because she was falling for someone who had as much to lose as she did. Someone who could break her heart as easily as Victor Sterling's father had broken her family. But Lily was tired of being safe, tired of hiding, tired of making choices based on fear. She went upstairs to her tiny apartment, looked at the papers spread across her kitchen table, maps of Sterling's corporate empire, timelines of his acquisitions, evidence of his crimes, and made a decision. She was going to take down Victor Sterling, and she was going to let Adrian Vale matter to her. And maybe, just maybe, she was going to stop being invisible and start being someone who fought back. 2 weeks later, Marcus sent his first real intelligence package. Lily was working late when the encrypted file appeared in her secure email. She opened it and felt her pulse quicken. Email chains between Sterling and his acquisitions team discussing target companies with the same cold calculation her grandfather's destroyers had probably used. References to asset optimization strategies and liquidation timelines that proved intent. Names of shell companies she recognized from her earlier research. This was it. This was the evidence they needed. Lily printed everything, spread it across her desk, and started mapping connections. By the time Adrian appeared in her doorway 2 hours later, she had covered an entire wall with documents and strings connecting different pieces of the puzzle. "Lily," Adrian said quietly, "please tell me you found something." She turned to face him, and she couldn't keep the fierce smile off her face. "I found everything. Sterling's not just committing fraud. He's running an entire system of it. Multiple teams, coordinated strategies, years of premeditated destruction." Adrian crossed the room in 3 strides and looked at her wall. His expression shifted as he read, understanding dawning. "This is enough for a criminal case," he said. "If we get the rest of it, yes. Marcus sent about 20% of what exists, but we have direction now. We know what we're looking for." Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marcus, it's Vale. The package was perfect. How fast can you get the rest?" He listened, his jaw tightening. "Understood. Be careful." He hung up and looked at Lily. Marcus says there's more. A lot more. But Sterling's getting paranoid. They're talking about implementing new security protocols, limiting access to sensitive files. How long do we have? Maybe 2 weeks before Marcus gets locked out. We need to move fast. They worked through the night, organizing what they had and planning their next moves. Somewhere around 4 a.m., Adrian ordered food that neither of them really ate. Around 5 a.m., Lily's eyes started crossing from exhaustion. Go home, Adrian said gently. Get some real sleep. This will still be here tomorrow. What about you? I have that conference call with Tokyo at 6. He rubbed his face. And then I'm taking Marco to school. Want to come with? Lily blinked. To Tokyo, to drop off Marco. Adrian smiled tiredly. You said you wanted to meet him. He's been asking about you. Fear and excitement warred in Lily's chest. Okay, yes, I'll come. 3 hours later, Lily found herself in Adrian's car, trying not to panic. Marco was in the back seat, a skinny 8-year-old with messy dark hair and his father's intense eyes. He'd been staring at her since she got in the car. Are you Papa's girlfriend? He asked in accented English. Marco, Adrian said warningly. What? Nonna said I should ask questions. Lily turned to look at the kid. I'm your dad's friend, and I work with him. Nonna says you make him smile. He didn't smile much before. Your grandmother talks about me a lot, apparently. She talks about everything. Marco kicked his feet against the back of the seat. Do you like dinosaurs? Sure. What's your favorite? I don't really have... Mine's Spinosaurus. Papa says it's a weird choice, but Spinosaurus is the coolest because it could swim and eat sharks. Well, not actual sharks, but prehistoric fish, and Marco proceeded to deliver a 15-minute lecture on Spinosaurus hunting strategies while Adrian drove and Lily tried to keep up. By the time they reached the school, she'd learned more about dinosaurs than she ever thought she'd know. Okay, Piccolo, Adrian said, pulling up to the curb. You have everything? Marco checked his backpack. Lunch? Homework? Gym clothes? Wait. He scrambled back into the car and emerged with a battered dinosaur toy. Can't forget Terry. Terry the Tyrannosaurus? He's a Tarbosaurus, actually. Different species. The skull structure? Marco. Right. Bye, Papa. Bye, Lily. Marco was out of the car and running toward the building before Lily could respond. Adrian watched him go with an expression of pure love mixed with exhaustion. He's a lot. He's wonderful, Lily said honestly. I can see why you do everything for him. He liked you. That's rare. Marco's usually shy around new people. I didn't do anything. You listened to him talk about dinosaurs without looking bored. Trust me, that's enough. Adrian pulled back into traffic. What are you doing Sunday? Probably working. Why? Marco wants to go to the Natural History Museum, the dinosaur exhibit. He's asked me to invite you. Lily's heart did something complicated. He wants me there? He specifically said Lily should come because she needs to learn more about Spinosaurus. Adrian smiled. Consider it a formal invitation. Okay, yes, I'll come. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Lily said, Your son asked if I was your girlfriend. I heard. What should I have said? Adrian glanced at her. What do you want to be? Lily thought about Victoria's warning, about the wall of evidence in her office, about how complicated this all was, about how much she had to lose if this went wrong. Then she thought about Adrian's smile, about Marco's enthusiastic dinosaur lecture, about feeling like part of something instead of invisible and alone. I want to find out, she said. Adrian reached over and took her hand. Then we will. Sunday at the Natural History Museum turned out to be less about dinosaurs and more about watching Marco try to explain every exhibit to Lily, while Adrian followed behind with the resigned patience of a man who'd heard these lectures approximately 400 times. And this one, Marco said, pointing at a skeleton that looked like it had too many teeth, is a Deinonychus, which most people think is just a velociraptor, but they're totally different, and Jurassic Park got it wrong because real velociraptors were actually only like 2 feet tall. Marco, Adrian interrupted gently, maybe let Lily look at the display for more than 3 seconds before you move on to the next one. Marco looked genuinely distressed by this suggestion. But there are 17 more exhibits, and we only have 2 hours before the museum closes, and Lily needs to understand the difference between theropods and sauropods. I'm fine, Lily said, laughing despite herself. Keep going, I'm learning. Marco beamed at her and immediately launched into an explanation of why the museum's T-Rex skeleton was positioned wrong based on recent research about tail dynamics. Adrian caught Lily's eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry," while Marco wasn't looking. Lily just shook her head. She'd spent the week neck-deep in corporate fraud and late-night strategy sessions with Adrian. This was exactly the kind of normal she needed, even if normal involved more dinosaur facts than any human should reasonably possess. They made it through the entire exhibit, stopped for overpriced museum cafe food, and were heading toward the exit when Marco suddenly grabbed Lily's hand. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his voice lower than before. "Sure." "Are you going to leave like Mama did?" The question hit Lily like a physical blow. Adrian had frozen 3 steps ahead of them, his back rigid. Lily knelt down so she was eye level with Marco. The kid's face was trying very hard to look casual, but his eyes were worried. 8 years old and already familiar with loss. "Your mama didn't leave because she wanted to," Lily said carefully. "She got sick. That wasn't her choice." "I know, but she's still gone." Marco's voice got quieter. "Nonna says you make Papa happy. But what if you leave too?" Lily glanced at Adrian, who had turned around now. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "I can't promise I'll never leave," Lily said honestly, because lying to kids seemed worse than uncomfortable truth. "People don't always stay, but I can promise that if I do leave, it won't be because I don't care about you and your papa. Okay?" Marco thought about this for a long moment. Then he said, "Nonna says caring isn't always enough. Your Nonna is very wise. She's also kind of scary." "That too." Lily stood up and held out her hand. "But how about we don't worry about leaving right now? We can just worry about getting gelato because I saw a place across the street and I've never actually had real Italian gelato." Marco's face transformed. "You've never had gelato? Papa, did you hear that? Lily's never had gelato." "I heard," Adrian said, and his voice was rough in a way that had nothing to do with his accent. "We should fix that immediately." They crossed to the gelato shop, Marco now lecturing about the difference between gelato and ice cream with the same intensity he'd brought to dinosaurs. While he was distracted by the display case of flavors, Adrian leaned close to Lily. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being honest with him. He's been asking me about you all week, and I didn't know what to say." "What did you want to say?" "That I'm terrified, that I haven't let anyone matter this much in years, that I'm already in too deep to walk away without it hurting." Adrian's dark eyes were intense. "But that seemed like a lot to put on an 8-year-old. "Probably," Lily agreed. Her heart was beating too fast. "For what it's worth, I'm terrified too." "Yeah? I've spent a decade being invisible because it was safer than being seen. And now I'm here, getting involved with my boss, meeting his kid, planning to take down the same kind of monster that destroyed my family. If this goes wrong, it won't." "You can't promise that." "No," Adrian admitted. "But I can promise I'm not walking away. Whatever happens with Sterling, whatever happens with us, I'm not leaving." Marco reappeared between them, holding a sample spoon of something bright green. "Lily, you have to try the pistachio. It's the best one. Papa always gets boring chocolate, but pistachio is superior in every way." Lily tried the pistachio. It was good. Better than good. Marco looked so proud of himself that Lily ordered a full cup of it just to see him smile. They walked through Central Park as the sun started setting, Marco running ahead to climb on rocks while Adrian and Lily followed at a slower pace. For a few hours, Lily could almost forget about the evidence mounting in her office. The encrypted files from Marcus that kept arriving every few days. The case they were building against Victor Sterling piece by dangerous piece. Almost. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" Adrian asked immediately. "Marcus just sent an alert. Sterling's implementing the new security protocols tomorrow. This is our last window." Adrian pulled out his own phone and read the message. His jaw tightened. "He says he can get one more batch of files tonight if we're ready to move." "We're not ready. We need at least another week to—" "We don't have another week." Adrian was already typing a response. "If Sterling locks down his systems, we lose access to everything. Marcus is saying it's now or never. Lily watched Marco climb on a bronze statue of a lion, completely oblivious to the fact that the adults were planning something that could blow up spectacularly. If we move too fast and miss something critical, if we wait and lose access, we get nothing. Adrian finished typing and looked at her. I know it's risky, but this is the opening we have. I need to go back to the office, go through everything we have so far, figure out what gaps we absolutely need to fill before Marcus gets locked out. I'll take Marco home and meet you there. Adrian, it's Sunday. You should stay with your son. My son is the reason I'm doing this, Adrian said quietly. Sterling doesn't just threaten my company, he threatens Marco's future, everything I'm building for him. He looked at where Marco was now hanging upside down from the lion's tail, laughing at something only 8-year-olds found funny. I need to finish this. For him. Lily understood. She'd been fighting for ghosts. Her father, her grandfather, the family legacy that got destroyed. But Adrian was fighting for someone who was very much alive. Someone who climbed on statues and asked hard questions and deserved better than inheriting a company buried in legal warfare. Okay, she said, I'll meet you at the office in 2 hours. They collected Marco, who complained loudly about leaving the park early but perked up when Adrian promised pizza for dinner. Lily hugged the kid goodbye. He'd started hugging her somewhere between the theropods and the sauropods and caught a cab back to Vale Tower. The building was mostly empty on Sunday evening. Lily's footsteps echoed in the lobby as she made her way to the elevator. The security guard waved her through without comment. She'd become a fixture here in the past month, working hours that would have seemed insane when she was just waiting tables. Her office looked like a conspiracy theorist's dream. Papers covered every surface, strings connecting different pieces of evidence on the wall, color-coded notes marking priority items. Lily had become obsessed with finding every thread of Sterling's fraud, every hidden connection, every piece of proof they'd need to make the case airtight. She pulled up the files Marcus had sent over the past 3 weeks and started making lists. What they had, what they needed, what gaps would be fatal if left unfilled. By the time Adrian arrived, she'd covered 3 whiteboards with notes. Tell me, he said, setting down 2 coffees and closing the door. Lily walked him through it. They had evidence of Sterling's acquisition strategy, the targeting of vulnerable family businesses, the deliberately predatory contract terms. They had internal emails showing coordination between Sterling and his acquisition team. They had financial records proving the offshore accounts where stripped assets disappeared. What they didn't have was the smoking gun, the document or email or recording that proved beyond any doubt that Sterling knew he was committing fraud, that it wasn't just aggressive business tactics, but deliberate criminal enterprise. We need his personal communications, Lily said, not the sanitized corporate emails, the real ones. The conversations where he tells his lawyers how to structure the fraud, where he talks about covering tracks. Marcus says those are kept on Sterling's private server, separate from the company network. Can he access it? Not without Sterling's personal login credentials, which he won't have unless… Adrian stopped. Unless Sterling gives them to him. Why would Sterling do that? Because Marcus is about to become indispensable. Adrian pulled out his phone and made a call. Marcus, it's Vale. I need you to make yourself valuable, tomorrow, whatever it takes. He listened, then said, I know it's dangerous. That's why I'm paying you enough to retire if this works. Another pause. Good. Call me as soon as you have access. He hung up and looked at Lily. Marcus is going to approach Sterling directly tomorrow. Tell him he found a security vulnerability in their acquisition tracking system. Offer to fix it personally. And if Sterling suspects Marcus has been building credibility for 3 weeks, he's good at this. He'll make it work. Adrian rubbed his face. We don't have better options. They spent the next 4 hours preparing for what Marcus might find, building frameworks for analyzing whatever data came through, identifying the specific types of communication they needed to complete the case, planning their next moves based on different scenarios. Somewhere around midnight, Lily's eyes started crossing. She'd been reading the same financial document for 10 minutes without processing any of it. We should stop, Adrian said. Come back fresh tomorrow. We can't afford to waste time. Lily, Adrian pulled the papers out of her hands. You're exhausted. You've been working 12-hour days for a month. You need sleep. So do you. I'll sleep when Sterling's in prison. But even as he said it, Adrian was leaning back in his chair, his eyes closing. Lily studied him in the dim office light. The shadows under his eyes had gotten darker. He'd lost weight. The careful control he usually maintained was starting to crack around the edges. "When did you last take a day off?" she asked. "When did you?" "That's not an answer." Adrian opened his eyes. "I took Marco to the museum today." "That counts." While mentally planning corporate warfare the entire time. "I'm multitasking." His smile was tired. "Besides, you were there too. You worked all day yesterday and you'll work all day tomorrow. You don't get to lecture me about rest." "Someone should lecture both of us." "Probably." Adrian stood and held out his hand. "Come on, I'm driving you home." "I can take a cab." "Lily, let me drive you home." They drove through Manhattan in comfortable silence. The city was quieter at night, the usual chaos muted. Lily watched the buildings slide past and tried not to think about how natural this felt, how easy it would be to get used to Adrian's presence, his intensity, his careful attention to details most people would miss, how much it would hurt when this inevitably ended. "You're thinking too loud," Adrian said without taking his eyes off the road. "How can you tell?" "You get this look, like you're calculating probabilities and none of them are good." He glanced at her. "What are you worried about?" "All of it. Marcus getting caught, Sterling figuring out what we're doing, the case falling apart." Lily paused. "Us." "What about us?" "That I'm going to mess this up, that I'm not cut out for dating a billionaire who has an 8-year-old son and a company to run and enemies who play for keeps." Adrian pulled up in front of her building and put the car in park. Then he turned to face her fully. "I'm going to tell you something Elena made me promise before she died," he said. "She told me that fear is just love with nowhere to go, that being afraid of losing something just means it matters." His hand found hers. "You're afraid because this matters. So am I. That doesn't mean we're doing it wrong. Your wife was very wise. She was brilliant and kind, and she would have liked you." Adrian squeezed her hand. "She also would have told me to stop being an idiot and just say what I'm thinking." "Which is?" "That I'm falling for you, fast and hard and in ways that terrify me. And I know that's probably too much too soon, but I'm tired of being careful. I've spent 3 years being careful, and it just made me lonely." He looked at her with those dark, intense eyes. "I don't want to be lonely anymore." Lily's throat was tight. "I don't know how to do this. Be someone's girlfriend. Be part of a family. I've been alone for so long. Then we'll figure it out together." Adrian touched her face gently. No pressure, no expectations, just us. Trying. Lily kissed him instead of answering. It felt easier than words, safer than admitting how much she wanted this to work. When she pulled back, Adrian was smiling. "Is that a yes?" "It's a let's find out." Lily opened the car door. "Go home, get some sleep. We have a long week ahead." "Yes, ma'am." Lily watched him drive away, then climb the 4 flights to her apartment. Her phone buzzed as she unlocked the door. A message from Marcus. "I'm in. Meeting with Sterling first thing tomorrow. Cross your fingers." Lily forwarded it to Adrian, then collapsed on her couch without bothering to change clothes. Tomorrow everything would change. Either they'd get what they needed to destroy Sterling, or Marcus would get caught, and their entire plan would explode. She fell asleep trying not to calculate the odds. The next morning started with chaos. Lily was halfway through her first coffee when Patricia appeared in her office doorway looking rattled. "Turn on the news," she said. "Financial channel. Now." Lily grabbed her remote and switched on the TV mounted in her office. The headline made her stomach drop. Sterling Global announces major acquisition. European textile manufacturer Castellane Industries to be absorbed. 300 jobs at risk. Victor Sterling was on screen, looking smug and polished, talking about optimization and market efficiencies, while carefully avoiding the word liquidation. Adrian appeared in her doorway seconds later. "You're watching this?" "He's accelerating the timeline," Lily said, her eyes glued to the screen. "Castellane wasn't supposed to be absorbed for another 6 months. He's moving faster than the pattern predicts." "Because he knows we're coming." Adrian's voice was tight. "He doesn't know who or how, but he suspects something. So he's liquidating assets while he still can." Lily pulled up her files on Castellane. The family daughters who'd sold to Sterling. The employees who'd worked there for generations. 300 people about to lose their jobs because Victor Sterling wanted to cover his fraud faster. We need to warn them, she said. With what? We can't prove anything yet. Sterling's lawyers would bury us in defamation suits before we finished the sentence. Adrian paced her small office. We need Marcus to come through, today, or Castellane is just the first domino. Lily's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. It's Marcus, the voice said without preamble. I'm in Sterling's office in 20 minutes. He bought the security vulnerability story. But we have a problem. What kind of problem? Sterling's paranoid. He's implementing a new policy today. All access to sensitive files requires dual authentication, him and his head of legal. After today, I won't be able to get anything without both of them signing off. Lily's heart was racing. Can you get what we need before the new policy kicks in? If I'm fast and lucky, yeah. But it's risky. If Sterling's IT monitors file access in real time, how long do you need? 30 minutes of uninterrupted access to his private server, maybe 40 if the encryption is complex. Lily looked at Adrian, who'd been listening to every word. He nodded once. Do it, Lily said. Whatever you can get. We'll handle the fallout. You better hope there isn't any fallout, Marcus said, because if Sterling catches me, I'm going to prison and you're getting nothing. He hung up. Adrian and Lily stared at each other. This is insane, Lily said. Yes, if Marcus gets caught, he won't. But Adrian didn't sound convinced. He sounded like a man making a bet he couldn't afford to lose. They waited. 45 minutes that felt like 45 hours. Lily tried to work but couldn't focus. Adrian made phone calls, but she could tell he wasn't really listening to whoever was on the other end. Patricia brought lunch that neither of them touched. At 11:37 a.m., Lily's computer chimed with an incoming encrypted file. She opened it, and there it was. Email after email of Victor Sterling coordinating with lawyers about asset optimization strategies. Discussions about timing liquidations to avoid regulatory scrutiny. Instructions to his acquisition team about targeting companies with specific vulnerabilities. Communications with offshore account managers about hiding transferred assets. The smoking gun. All of it. Years of deliberate, premeditated fraud laid out in Sterling's own words. Adrian, Lily said, her voice shaking, look at this. He crossed to her computer and started reading. His expression went from tense to focused to something that looked almost like satisfaction. This is it, he said quietly. This is everything we need. Lily's phone rang again. Marcus. Did you get it? He asked. Every word. Marcus, this is good, because I need to disappear for a while. Sterling's IT flagged unusual server access. They're investigating. I'm clearing out before they connect it to me. Are you safe? I will be once I'm on a plane to somewhere without extradition treaties. Vale's paying me enough to retire in style. A pause. Good luck taking him down. Make it hurt. Marcus hung up. Lily looked at Adrian. He's running. Sterling's people flagged the access. How long before they figure out it was Marcus? Hours. Maybe less if they're smart. And how long before Sterling figures out where the files went? Lily's stomach sank. If he traces Marcus's employment back to you, he'll know I'm the one building a case against him. Adrian's jaw was set. Which means we're out of time. We need to move now. Move how? We have evidence, but we need to get it to prosecutors, build the actual legal case. No time for that. Sterling will bury everything the moment he knows we have it. Destroy documents, move money, disappear witnesses. Adrian was already pulling out his phone. We need to go public. Now. Force his hand before he can cover his tracks. Public how? Adrian made a call. This is Adrian Vale. I need to speak to your investigative team. Yes. It's urgent. Tell them I have evidence of corporate fraud that will make their careers. A pause. The New York Times? Yes. I'll hold. Lily's heart was pounding. This was really happening. They were really doing this. Adrian spent the next hour on the phone with journalists, lawyers, and what sounded like federal prosecutors. Lily, meanwhile, organized every piece of evidence they had into a comprehensive file. The acquisition patterns, the offshore accounts, the internal communications, Marcus's smoking gun emails, all of it. By 3 p.m., they had 3 major newspapers interested and 2 federal agencies opening preliminary investigations. By 5 p.m., the first article went live. Billionaire Victor Sterling under investigation for systematic corporate fraud.
The article was careful, loaded with words like alleged and sources say, but it laid out the pattern: the targeting of vulnerable companies, the asset stripping, the offshore accounts, and it quoted unnamed sources with access to internal Sterling global communications. Lily's phone exploded with notifications. Adrian's did the same. The story was everywhere within minutes: financial networks, business channels, social media. Sterling Global's stock price started dropping. "He knows," Adrian said, reading something on his phone. "Sterling just called an emergency board meeting. He's scrambling." Lily felt something fierce and hot unfurl in her chest. This was it. This was revenge for her father, for her grandfather, for every family Sterling's fraud had destroyed. Her office phone rang. Patricia. "Lily, there's a man here to see you. He says his name is Victor Sterling, and he's not leaving until you talk to him." The bottom dropped out of Lily's stomach. "He's here? In the building?" "Lobby level. Security won't let him up without your permission." Adrian had heard every word. His expression went dangerous. "Tell security to remove him. Now." "Wait," Lily said. An idea was forming. Reckless and stupid, but maybe brilliant. "Let him up." "Lily, he wants to threaten me, convince me to back down. Let him try." She looked at Adrian. "But I need you to record it. Everything he says. If he admits anything, it's too dangerous. He's not going to hurt me in your building surrounded by security and witnesses. But he might say something we can use." Lily's mind was racing. "He's panicking. Panicked people make mistakes." Adrian looked like he wanted to argue. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Security, send Sterling up, but I want 2 guards outside the conference room and someone monitoring the cameras. If he touches her, you drag him out." He hung up and looked at Lily. "Conference room, not your office. More cameras, more witnesses." They moved to the large conference room down the hall. Adrian set up his phone to record audio. Then he stepped back. "I'll be right outside," he said. "Say the word, and I come in. I'll be fine." "Lily," Adrian stopped himself. "Be careful." Victor Sterling arrived 3 minutes later, escorted by security who looked very much like they wanted an excuse to forcibly remove him. He was still polished, still controlled, but there were cracks. His tie was slightly loose, his hair not quite perfect. The smile he gave Lily was all teeth and no warmth. "Miss Moreau," he said, "we meet again."
"Mr. Sterling," Lily gestured to a chair, "I assume you're here about the news." "I'm here about the lies you and Vale are spreading." Sterling sat down and folded his hands. "Lies that will cost you everything if you don't retract them immediately." "They're not lies. You have no proof of any wrongdoing. You have coincidence and speculation and the word of a spy I'm about to have arrested for corporate espionage." So Sterling had already figured out Marcus, faster than Lily expected. "We have your emails," Lily said calmly. "Your internal communications, documentation of every fraudulent acquisition you've coordinated for the past 5 years. We gave it all to the Times and the federal prosecutors." Sterling's face went very still. "Those communications are privileged. Attorney-client privilege. You can't use them." "Actually, crime fraud exception says we can. Privilege doesn't cover communications made in furtherance of a crime." Lily smiled. "You should know that. Your lawyers certainly will." "You smug little—" Sterling caught himself. The mask slipped back into place, but not before Lily saw the rage underneath. "You have no idea what you've done. Do you know how many people I employ? How many families depend on Sterling Global?" "About as well as I know how many families you've destroyed." Lily leaned forward. "Like mine. Your father bankrupted my grandfather's textile company using the exact same playbook you're running now. My father had a stroke from the stress. He died 6 months later. I was 19 years old and I watched everything we had disappear because your family wanted to be richer." Sterling's expression didn't change. "Business is competitive, Miss Moreau. Sometimes people lose. That's not fraud. That's capitalism. Except you don't just compete. You cheat. You target vulnerable companies. You structure deals designed to fail. And you strip assets while the families who built those companies watch everything burn." Lily's voice was steady, despite the fury building in her chest. "You're not a businessman. You're a predator, and we're going to prove it. With stolen evidence obtained through corporate espionage? Sterling stood. Every document you have will be thrown out. Every prosecutor will drop the case. And then I'm going to sue you and Vale for everything you have. You'll spend the rest of your life in debt paying for this mistake. Maybe. Lily stood too. Or maybe you'll be in prison. I guess we'll find out. Sterling leaned across the table, close enough that Lily could smell his expensive cologne. I know who you are, he said quietly. I know your mother is sick. I know she needs expensive treatments you can barely afford. I know you live in a fourth-floor walk-up in Queens and work yourself to exhaustion just to stay afloat. Lily's heart was pounding, but she didn't step back. So here's what's going to happen, Sterling continued. You're going to retract these lies. You're going to disappear back into whatever hole you crawled out of. And if you do that, I'll make sure your mother gets the treatment she needs, the best doctors, the best facility, all paid for. You're trying to bribe me. I'm offering you a way out. Take it. Lily looked at this man who'd destroyed her family, who was still destroying families, who thought money and threats could make anything go away. No, she said. Sterling's face went hard. Then you're stupider than I thought. I will crush you. You and Vale and anyone who helped you. By the time I'm done, the door opened. Adrian walked in, followed by 2 security guards. I think we're finished here, Adrian said coldly. Get out of my building. Sterling looked between them. His expression shifted into something ugly. You two deserve each other, a failed waitress and a lonely widower playing at revenge. This isn't going to end the way you think. Guards, Adrian said. Remove him. They escorted Sterling out while he was still making threats. When the door closed, Lily realized her hands were shaking. Did you get it? She asked. Adrian held up his phone. Every word, including the part where he tried to bribe you. And the part where he basically admitted he knows exactly what we're accusing him of. That too. Adrian crossed to her. Are you okay? I'm furious. I'm terrified. Lily stopped. I'm glad we're doing this. Adrian pulled her into a hug. Lily let herself lean into it just for a moment. Tomorrow, they'd be back to fighting. But right now, she needed this. The reminder that she wasn't alone. He threatened your mother, Adrian said quietly. I know. We should increase her security, move her to a better facility. Somewhere Sterling can't. Adrian, I can't afford. I can. He pulled back to look at her. Let me help, please. Sterling just threatened her directly. We need to make sure she's safe. Lily wanted to argue, wanted to say she could handle it herself, but the truth was, she couldn't. Sterling had resources she couldn't match, and her mother deserved better than being used as leverage. Okay, she said. Thank you. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news. That was faster than I expected. Sterling's lawyer just called demanding to know my sources. This is about to get very loud. Rebecca Chen, NYT. Then another text, this one from a number she recognized. Victoria. I assume the news about Sterling is your doing? Well done. Come to dinner this week. Marco has questions and I want to make sure you're eating real food. V. Lily showed Adrian the messages. He smiled tired. Welcome to the aftermath, he said. This is where it gets messy. He wasn't wrong. The rest of the week was chaos. More articles dropped, each one digging deeper into Sterling's business practices. Federal prosecutors opened formal investigations. Sterling Global's stock continued its free fall. Board members started resigning. And through it all, Lily and Adrian worked, organizing evidence, talking to investigators, building the case that would hopefully put Sterling away for decades. It was exhausting. It was terrifying. It was exactly what Lily had needed for 10 years. She was fighting back. And this time, she wasn't alone. The emergency board meeting at Sterling Global headquarters happened exactly 2 weeks after the Times article broke. Adrian got the notification from a contact inside Sterling's organization at 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning, and by 7 a.m. he and Lily were strategizing over coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He's going to try to spin this, Adrian said, reading through the leaked agenda. Blame the allegations on competitors, call it a coordinated attack, convince the board to stand behind him. Will it work? Lily asked, though she already knew the answer wasn't simple. Depends on how scared the board is. Sterling owns enough shares to make removal difficult, but if enough board members turn on him... Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at it and his expression shifted. It's my contact inside Sterling's legal team. I need to take this. He stepped out, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts and approximately 17 browser tabs of Sterling-related news. The past 2 weeks had been a blur of interviews with prosecutors, late nights organizing evidence, and watching Sterling's empire crack apart in real time. 3 more board members had resigned. Sterling Global stock had lost 40% of its value, and federal investigators were now openly calling it a criminal probe instead of a preliminary investigation. But Sterling himself hadn't broken, hadn't admitted anything, hadn't shown even a flicker of the panic Lily knew he must be feeling. That made her nervous. Adrian came back looking grim. Sterling just fired his entire acquisitions team, including the head of the department. He's calling it restructuring, but my contact says he's eliminating anyone who might flip on him. Can he do that? He just did. And he's offering generous severance packages in exchange for NDAs and non-disparagement agreements. Adrian sat down heavily. He's buying silence, making sure no one testifies against him. Lily felt something cold settle in her stomach. The prosecutors can still compel testimony. Against people who've signed legal agreements saying they won't talk? It gets complicated. Sterling's lawyers are good. They know how to make cooperation difficult. Adrian rubbed his face. We need someone from inside who's willing to talk despite the NDA. Someone with direct knowledge who can testify to intent. Who? I don't know yet, but his phone rang again. Different ringtone. Marco. Adrian's whole demeanor shifted as he answered. Ciao, piccolo. Tutto bene? Lily couldn't understand the rapid Italian, but she could hear the worry in Marco's young voice. Adrian's expression went from concerned to angry. I'll be right there, he said, switching to English. Don't talk to anyone else. I'm coming to get you now. He hung up and was already grabbing his jacket. Someone approached Marco at school. A man claiming to be a journalist asking questions about you and me. Lily's blood went cold. Sterling sent someone after your son? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe it was actually a journalist, but I'm not taking chances. Adrian was heading for the door. Come with me. I don't want you here alone if Sterling's escalating. They drove to Marco's school in tense silence. Adrian's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. When they arrived, Marco was waiting in the principal's office looking small and scared. Papa! He ran to Adrian, who scooped him up despite the fact that Marco was probably getting too old for it. Va tutto bene, Adrian murmured. Sei al sicuro, ti ho preso. The principal, a severe woman in her 50s, looked deeply uncomfortable. Mr. Vale, I apologize. The man had press credentials. He claimed he was doing a story on successful New York businessmen and their families. Our front desk didn't realize. What did he ask my son? Adrian's voice was dangerously quiet. According to Marco, questions about Miss Moreau. How often she visits? Whether she stays overnight. If Marco likes her. The principal glanced at Lily apologetically. He seemed to be fishing for details about your personal life. Did he identify which publication he worked for? He said the Times, but when we called to verify, they had no record of sending anyone. The principal clasped her hands. I've already filed a report with the police, and we're implementing new protocols for visitor screening. Adrian set Marco down gently. Thank you. I'm taking my son home for the rest of the day, and I'll be arranging private security for school pickup and drop-off going forward. They left, Marco holding his father's hand tightly. In the car, the kid was quiet until they were halfway to Adrian's penthouse. Did I do something bad? He asked in a small voice. What? No, Piccolo, you didn't. The man asked about Lily, and I told him she's nice and she knows about dinosaurs and she makes you smile. Did I mess up? Lily's throat was tight. She turned around to face Marco in the back seat. You didn't mess up. The man shouldn't have been asking you questions at all. That's not your fault. But now you and Papa are upset. We're upset at the man, not at you, Adrian said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong. They got Marco settled at home with his grandmother, who'd arrived within 15 minutes of Adrian's call and looked ready to commit murder on behalf of her grandson. Vittoria listened to what happened with a face like carved stone. This Sterling man is becoming a problem, she said quietly, in English so Marco wouldn't understand the Italian. Perhaps it's time to consider less legal solutions. Nonna, Adrian said warningly. I'm simply saying that my family in Sicily knows people who could make certain problems disappear. Vittoria's expression was perfectly pleasant. Permanently. We're not having anyone killed. I didn't say killed, I said disappear. Very different. But Vittoria's slight smile suggested she wasn't entirely joking. Fine. Do it your legal way. But if this man comes near Marco again, I'm making phone calls. Adrian and Lily left Marco in Vittoria's extremely capable hands and headed back to Vale Tower. The elevator ride up was silent until Lily said, "Your mother-in-law just offered to have Sterling killed." "She does that. I don't think she's serious." She sounded pretty serious. Her family is old money Sicilian aristocracy. They have connections. But she knows I won't authorize violence. Adrian paused. Probably knows. Despite everything, Lily almost laughed. Then reality crashed back. Sterling's targeting your family now. That's escalation. He's desperate. The board meeting is today. If they turn on him, he loses control of the company. He's lashing out. Adrian's jaw was tight. Which makes him more dangerous. They spent the rest of the morning coordinating with the prosecutors and watching for news from the board meeting. Around 2 p.m., Lily's phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca Chen at the Times. Board meeting just ended. Source says it was brutal. Sterling retained his position, but barely. 4 board members called for his resignation. He's wounded, but still in charge. Lily showed Adrian, who swore in Italian. Not enough, he said. We heard him, but we didn't finish it. The prosecutors are building a case that could take years. And every day Sterling remains free, he can destroy more evidence, silence more witnesses, hurt more people. Adrian paced his office. We need to force the board's hand, give them something so damning they have no choice but to remove him. Like what? We already gave them everything we have. Adrian stopped pacing. Not everything. We have one thing we haven't used yet. What? The Castellane family. The textile company Sterling just gutted. They're furious. The employees are losing their jobs next month. If we could convince them to go public, make noise, put faces to Sterling's fraud, they signed NDAs when they sold, Lily said. Sterling made sure of that. As don't cover criminal activity. If they're willing to break the agreement and testify about what Sterling promised versus what he actually did. Adrian pulled out his phone. I have contacts in Lyon. Let me make some calls. While Adrian worked on the Castellane angle, Lily got a call from the lead prosecutor, a sharp woman named Sarah Okonkwo, who'd been handling the federal case. We have a problem, Sarah said without preamble. Sterling's lawyers are claiming the emails Marcus obtained were accessed illegally. They're moving to have everything he gave you suppressed as evidence. Lily's heart sank. Can they do that? They're going to try. They're arguing that Marcus committed computer fraud, which means anything obtained through his access is fruit of the poisonous tree. If the judge agrees, we lose our smoking gun. But Sterling's own emails prove doesn't matter how damning they are if they're inadmissible. We need to fight this, but it's going to be complicated. Sarah sighed. I'm not saying the case is dead, but it just got a lot harder. Lily hung up and put her head in her hands. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd risked, and it might get thrown out on a technicality. What happened? Adrian asked, appearing in her doorway. Lily explained. Adrian listened with an expression that got progressively darker. So we need to prove Sterling's guilt without the emails, he said when she finished. How? Those emails were the clearest evidence we had. Then we find other evidence. There has to be something Sterling can't suppress. Something that proves intent without relying on Marcus's access. Adrian sat down. Think. What do we have that's completely independent of Marcus? Lily pulled up her files and started going through them systematically. The acquisition patterns they'd mapped. The offshore account transfers. The testimony from families Sterling had destroyed. The pattern itself is evidence, she said slowly. Not of specific fraud, but of systematic predatory behavior. If we can show that Sterling's acquisitions consistently follow the same destructive playbook, it's circumstantial, not enough for criminal charges. But maybe enough to convince the board, especially if we combine it with victim testimony. Lily was thinking out loud now. Castellane is just the most recent. There are dozens of companies Sterling's destroyed over the years. If even a few of those families are willing to go public, they'd need to break their NDAs. Sterling can't sue everyone. If enough people speak up at once, the story becomes too big to suppress. Lily looked at Adrian. We need to organize the victims. Get them talking to each other. Show them they're not alone. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, That's not legal strategy. That's public relations warfare. Sterling's using legal tactics to avoid criminal charges. Maybe we need to fight him in the court of public opinion instead. You want to destroy his reputation so thoroughly that the legal case becomes irrelevant. I want justice. If the legal system can't give us that, then yes, I'll settle for destroying him socially and professionally. Lily met Adrian's eyes. Is that wrong? No, Adrian said quietly. It's pragmatic. Elena used to say that sometimes the high road is just a slower way to lose. He pulled out his phone. I'll reach out to the families. You coordinate with the Times and any other journalists who will listen. We're going to make Sterling's fraud impossible to ignore. They worked through the evening, making calls and sending emails. Adrian's contacts in Europe started reaching out to families Sterling had destroyed. Lily coordinated with 3 different news organizations about human interest pieces on the victims. Around 9 p.m., Patricia appeared with food neither of them had asked for but desperately needed. You two look terrible, she said bluntly. Eat something, or I'm calling your mother-in-law, Mr. Vale, and telling her you're not taking care of yourself. That's a low blow, Patricia. I'm a professional assistant. Low blows are in my job description. She set down the containers. Also, there's someone in the lobby asking to see you. Says her name is Marguerite Castellan, and she drove here from Lyon specifically to talk to you both. Adrian and Lily looked at each other. Send her up, Adrian said. Marguerite Castellan was in her late 40s, elegant despite obvious exhaustion, with the kind of worn-down grief that came from fighting battles you knew you'd already lost. She walked into Adrian's office and looked between him and Lily. You're the ones destroying Victor Sterling, she said. Not a question. We're trying, Lily said carefully. Good. I want to help. Marguerite sat down without waiting for an invitation. Sterling took my family's company, 4 generations. My father built it from nothing. My sister and I thought we were selling to someone who would preserve it. Instead, he's liquidating everything. 300 people losing jobs. Our family name becoming a footnote. We know, Adrian said gently. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't pay mortgages. Sorry doesn't feed families. Marguerite's voice was hard. But revenge might make me feel better. What do you need from me? Lily explained the situation, the suppressed emails, the need for victim testimony, the plan to fight Sterling in public opinion if the courts failed them. Marguerite listened without interrupting. When Lily finished, she said, I'll testify. I'll break the NDA. I don't care if Sterling sues me. I'll tell every journalist who'll listen exactly what he promised and what he actually did. He'll come after you legally, Adrian warned. The NDA is binding. You could face serious financial penalties. Let him try. I'm already ruined. What's he going to take, my debt? Marguerite smiled bitterly. Besides, I talked to 7 other families on the flight over, companies Sterling destroyed in the last 5 years. They're all willing to speak publicly if I go first. Sterling can't sue all of us. Lily felt hope flicker. 7 families? Maybe more. I've been making calls since I saw the Times article. Turns out a lot of people want Sterling to pay for what he's done. We just needed someone to organize us. Marguerite looked at Lily. One of the families was Moreau Textiles. I spoke to your mother. Lily's breath caught. You spoke to my mother? She's in a care facility in Queens, yes? I visited her yesterday. She told me what Sterling's father did to your family. She also said she's very proud of you for fighting back. Marguerite's expression softened slightly. Your mother is braver than you think. She said she'd testify too if it would help. No. Lily's voice came out sharper than intended. My mother's too sick. The stress. She said you'd say that. She also said to remind you that she's stronger than she looks, and she's tired of watching you carry everything alone. Lily's eyes were burning. She looked at Adrian, who was watching her with something that looked like understanding. We don't need to decide now, he said quietly. But Marguerite, if you're serious about testifying, we should coordinate with the prosecutors. Get your story on record officially. They spent the next 2 hours going through Marguerite's experience with Sterling, the promises he'd made, the contract terms that had seemed reasonable until they triggered, the systematic dismantling of her family's legacy. By the time they finished, Lily had pages of notes and a renewed sense of purpose. After Marguerite left with plans to meet with prosecutors the next day, Lily and Adrian sat in his office in exhausted silence. "Your mother wants to help," Adrian said eventually. "She's too sick." "That's not your call to make." "She's my mother. Of course it's my call." "Lily," Adrian's voice was gentle, "you've been protecting her for 10 years. Maybe it's time to let her protect you back." Lily wanted to argue, but the truth was she was tired. Tired of carrying everything alone. Tired of being the only one fighting. "I'll talk to her," she said quietly, "but I'm not promising anything." The next morning, Lily visited her mother at the care facility Adrian had moved her to 3 weeks earlier. It was nicer than anywhere Lily could have afforded, with actual windows and staff who seemed to care, and physical therapy equipment that looked like it came from this decade. Her mother was in her room reading a book in French. She looked up when Lily entered and smiled. "There's my daughter," she said. Her English still carried a heavy accent despite 20 years in America. "Come sit. Tell me about this man you're dating." "Mama, I'm not here to talk about Adrian, but you are dating him, yes? The billionaire who moved me to this beautiful place and asks the staff how I'm doing every week?" Lily blinked. "He checks on you?" "Of course. He's very sweet and very worried about you working too hard." Her mother set down her book. "Now, I assume you're here because Marguerite told you I want to testify against Sterling." "You can't. The stress—" "The stress of watching my daughter fight alone is worse than any stress from testifying." Her mother's voice was firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Lily, I've spent 10 years being sick, being helpless, watching you sacrifice everything to take care of me. Let me do something useful." "You are useful. You're my mother. That's enough." "It's not enough for me." Her mother reached out and took Lily's hand. "I watched your father die from the stress of what Sterling's family did. I watched you give up your career, your life, to care for me, and I've been too weak to help. But this? Telling the truth about what they took from us? I can do that." Lily's throat was tight. "What if it makes you worse?" "Then at least I'll have fought back before I go. I'm tired of being a victim, ma chérie. Let me be a fighter." They sat in silence for a long moment, hands clasped, two women who'd survived more than they should have had to. "Okay," Lily said finally, "but if it gets to be too much, I'll tell you. I promise." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Now tell me about Adrian. He's handsome, yeah?" Despite everything, Lily laughed. "Maman?" "What? I'm sick, not dead. I want to know about my daughter's love life." They talked for another hour. About Adrian and Marco and the strange new life Lily was building. About the case and the plan and what might happen if they actually managed to take Sterling down. About hope, which felt dangerous but necessary. When Lily left, her mother was already making notes for her testimony, preparing to fight. The next week was a blur of coordinated chaos. Marguerite testified to the prosecutors. 3 more families came forward. Rebecca Chen at the Times published a massive piece on Sterling's victims, complete with interviews and documentation of destroyed companies. Other news outlets picked up the story. Sterling Global's stock went into freefall. The board called another emergency meeting. And then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, Adrian got the call they'd been waiting for. "It's done," he said, hanging up and looking at Lily with something like disbelief. "Sterling's out. The board just removed him as CEO. They're cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for immunity." Lily felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "We won?" "We won." Adrian crossed to her and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like victory and relief, and the end of something heavy they'd both been carrying. When they broke apart, Lily was crying and laughing at the same time. "My father," she said, and couldn't finish the sentence. "I know," Adrian said quietly. "He'd be proud of you." They stood there in Adrian's office, holding each other, while outside the rain kept falling and Victor Sterling's empire crumbled to nothing. It wasn't perfect. Sterling would probably avoid prison with expensive lawyers and plea deals. The legal battles would drag on for years. The victims would never fully recover what they'd lost. But for the first time in 10 years, Lily felt like she could breathe. 2 days later, federal marshals arrested Victor Sterling on charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. He was led out of his Fifth Avenue apartment in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. Lily watched it happen on the news with Adrian and Marco. The kid didn't fully understand what it meant, but he knew the bad man who'd sent someone to his school was being punished. "Does this mean you're done fighting?" Marco asked, looking between his father and Lily. "For now," Adrian said. "The lawyers take over from here." "Good." Marco climbed into Lily's lap, which he'd started doing recently. "Because Nonna says you both need a vacation before you forget what sleeping is." Lily looked at Adrian, who was smiling for the first time in what felt like months. "Your grandmother might be right," he said. "She's always right," Marco said matter-of-factly. "That's why she's scary." That evening, after Marco was in bed, Adrian found Lily on his penthouse terrace looking out at the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For fighting, for being brilliant and angry and impossible to intimidate, for saving my company and my son's future, for letting me matter to you even when it was complicated and risky." Adrian turned her to face him. "For being you." Lily kissed him instead of trying to find words big enough for what she was feeling. When they broke apart, Adrian was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "Stay," he said. "I'm not leaving." "Oh, no, I mean stay. Here, move in. You and your mother if she's willing. Stop commuting from Queens and living out of a suitcase half the time." Adrian touched her face gently. "I know it's fast. I know there are logistics, but I don't want this to be temporary. I want you here. Marco wants you here. Even Vittoria wants you here, and she doesn't like anyone." Lily's heart was racing. "Adrian?" "You don't have to answer now. Think about it. But know that I'm serious, about you, about us, about building something that lasts." Lily looked at this man who'd taken a chance on an invisible waitress, who'd trusted her with his company and his son, who'd fought beside her and never asked her to be less angry or less fierce. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you'll think about it." "Okay, I'll stay." Adrian's smile was brighter than the entire Manhattan skyline. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Lily felt the last piece of her carefully constructed invisibility fall away. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't alone anymore. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Moving into Adrian's penthouse should have been the easy part. It wasn't. Lily stood in the middle of what was now technically her bedroom, surrounded by boxes she'd been avoiding unpacking for 3 days, and felt the weight of every choice that had led her here. The room was bigger than her entire Queens apartment. The view alone probably cost more per month than she used to make in a year. And somewhere down the hall, Marco was arguing with his tutor about dinosaur taxonomy, while Adrian negotiated with lawyers about Sterling's plea deal. This was her life now, somehow. "You're thinking too loud again," Vittoria said from the doorway, making Lily jump. The older woman had a key to the penthouse and used it liberally, usually to ambush people with uncomfortable truths. "I'm just unpacking," Lily said, gesturing at the boxes. "You're standing in the middle of a room having an existential crisis. I've raised 2 children and buried a daughter. I know the difference." Vittoria walked in and sat on the bed like she owned it. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect. That's the problem." "Ah, you don't trust happiness because you're used to suffering." Vittoria nodded. "Very common. Very boring. Get over it." Despite herself, Lily laughed. "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. You fought a monster and won. You fell in love with a good man who has terrible taste in ties but excellent taste in women. You have a chance to build something beautiful. The only thing stopping you is your own fear." Vittoria stood and started unpacking one of Lily's boxes without asking permission. "So stop being afraid and start living." "I don't know how to do this. Be part of a family. Be someone's—" Lily stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. "Partner? Stepmother? Person who matters?" Vittoria pulled out a framed photo of Lily's father and set it carefully on the dresser. "You learn by doing. You make mistakes. You apologize when you hurt people. You try again. That's all any of us can do." "What if I'm not good enough? For Adrian? For Marco?" "My daughter was an artist, a dreamer, someone who saw beauty in everything. She was perfect for Adrian in ways you'll never be." Vittoria's voice was a matter of fact, not cruel. "But she's gone, and you are here. You are fierce where she was gentle.
You are angry where she was forgiving. You push Adrian to be better instead of accepting him as he is. That's exactly what he needs now. Lily's eyes were burning. I'm not trying to replace her. I know. That's why you'll succeed. Vittoria patted her shoulder. Now unpack these boxes before Adrian comes home and sees you spiraling. He worries enough without you giving him reasons. She left, and Lily was alone with her boxes and her fears and the knowledge that Vittoria was right. She'd spent so long being invisible that actually being seen felt dangerous. But hiding wasn't an option anymore, so she unpacked.
2 weeks later, the legal proceedings against Sterling reached a critical point. The plea deal negotiations had collapsed after Sterling refused to admit wrongdoing, which meant the case was going to trial. Sarah Okonkwo called Adrian and Lily into her office to prepare them for what was coming. This is going to be ugly, she said, spreading files across her desk. Sterling's lawyers are going scorched earth. They're going to attack every witness, question every piece of evidence, and try to make this about corporate espionage instead of fraud. Let them try, Lily said. We have the victim testimony. We have the pattern of behavior, which is circumstantial without the emails Marcus obtained. And Sterling's team is still trying to get those suppressed. Sarah looked tired. I'm not saying we'll lose, but it's not the slam dunk I'd hoped for. Adrian was quiet, reading through the trial strategy documents. Finally, he said, What do you need from us? Lily, you'll need to testify about your family's experience with Sterling's father, about the pattern you identified, about your analysis of the evidence. His lawyers will try to paint you as a vengeful ex-waitress with an agenda. Sarah looked apologetic. They're going to dig into your personal life, your relationship with Adrian, your mother's illness, everything. I can handle it, Lily said, though her stomach was churning. And Mr. Vale, they'll argue you orchestrated this entire thing to eliminate a business competitor, that you used Miss Moreau to build a case based on illegally obtained evidence. Sarah pulled out another file. They've already subpoenaed your communications with Marcus Chen. Adrian's expression went dark. Marcus is out of the country. They can't compel him to testify. No, but they can use his absence to suggest witness tampering. They're building a narrative where you're the villain, not Sterling. They spent 3 hours going over strategy, preparing for attacks, planning countermoves. By the time they left, Lily's head was pounding, and Adrian looked like he wanted to hit something. This is going to get worse before it gets better, he said in the car. I know. They're going to make you look bad, make us both look bad, twist everything we did into something ugly. I know that too. Lily looked at him. Are you having second thoughts? About taking down Sterling? Never. About putting you through this? Adrian's jaw tightened. Every day. Don't. Lily took his hand. I chose this. I knew the risks, and I'd do it again. They drove in silence until Adrian said quietly, Marco asked me yesterday if you're going to leave when the trial gets hard. Lily's chest tightened. What did you tell him? That I didn't know, that I hoped not, but that sometimes people leave even when you don't want them to. Adrian's voice was rough. He's 8 years old and already expecting abandonment. I hate that. I'm not leaving, Lily said firmly. The trial, the lawyers, whatever Sterling throws at us, I'm not going anywhere. You say that now? Uh-oh, Adrian? Lily waited until he looked at her. I lost my father because men like Sterling think people are disposable. I'm not going to lose you or Marco the same way. I'm staying. Something in Adrian's expression cracked. He pulled the car over to the curb. They were in front of Central Park, close to where they'd walked with Marco months ago, and kissed her hard enough that Lily forgot how to breathe. When they broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was scared. I'm still scared. But I love you. Lily's heart was racing. I love you too. Even though you're terrible at romantic timing and you work too much and you make me want to throw things at you sometimes. Only sometimes? I'm being generous. Lily kissed him again, softer this time. We're going to survive this. The trial, Sterling, all of it. And then we're going to build the life we want. Promise? I promise. The trial started 6 weeks later on a gray November morning. The courtroom was packed with journalists, legal observers, and representatives from the families Sterling had destroyed. Lily sat in the gallery next to Adrian, trying not to throw up from nerves. Sterling walked in wearing an expensive suit and an expression of wounded innocence. He looked thinner than Lily remembered, older, but his eyes were still cold when they landed on her. The prosecution's opening statement laid out the case methodically. Years of predatory acquisitions, systematic fraud, hundreds of families destroyed. The Moreau family featured prominently as an example: Lily's father, her grandfather's company, the cascade of destruction that had started with Sterling's father and continued through Victor. Sterling's lawyer countered with a story about competitive business practices, about unfortunate outcomes that weren't criminal, about a coordinated attack by jealous competitors. He painted Adrian as a rival seeking to eliminate competition. He portrayed Lily as a bitter employee with a personal vendetta. It was exactly what Sarah had warned them about, and it was working. Lily could see some jurors nodding along. The first week of testimony featured financial experts, corporate analysts, people who explained the mechanics of Sterling's acquisitions in excruciating detail. It was technical, dry, necessary, but not compelling. The second week brought the victims. Marguerite Castellane testified about watching her family's company get dismantled. A man named Thomas Chen talked about his father's electronics business being gutted. A woman named Sofia Rodriguez described losing the restaurant chain her grandmother had built. And then it was Lily's mother's turn. Lily had tried to talk her out of it one last time that morning. Her mother had refused, insisting she was strong enough. Now she sat in a wheelchair at the witness stand, her hands trembling but her voice steady, and told the jury about Moreau Textiles. "My father-in-law built that company from nothing," she said in her accented English. "After the war, when everything was destroyed, he started with one loom and a dream. 50 years he worked. My husband worked beside him for 30 years. We employed 200 people. We were a family." "And what happened when Sterling's father targeted your company?" Sarah asked gently. "He made promises. He said he would preserve the legacy, keep the workers, maintain the quality. My father-in-law believed him because he was old and tired and wanted to believe someone would care about what he'd built." Lily's mother's voice shook. Within 6 months, the company was gone, sold for parts. The workers fired. My father-in-law died of a heart attack. My husband had a stroke from the stress and never recovered. We lost everything. "And what happened to your family after that?" "My daughter gave up her career to care for me. She was brilliant, destined for important work, and instead she became invisible because we had nothing left." Lily's mother looked directly at Victor Sterling. "Your father took our dignity, our legacy, our future, and you continued his work. How many more families have you destroyed for money you don't need?" Sterling's lawyer objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Several jurors were openly crying. When Lily's mother finished, she was wheeled past Sterling on her way out of the courtroom. She stopped directly in front of him. "My husband would have loved to see this day," she said quietly, "but I'll watch you pay for both of us." Security had to help her navigate the wheelchair through the doors, but Lily saw the satisfaction on her mother's face. She'd fought back. Finally. That evening, Lily found her mother exhausted but triumphant in her room at the care facility. "You were amazing," Lily said, hugging her carefully. "I was honest. That's easier than being amazing." Her mother smiled tiredly. "Did I help?" "You were the best witness we've had. Sarah said the jury was completely with you." "Good, because I'm very tired now, and I'd like to not do that again." Lily laughed despite her tears. "Deal. No more trials. But I'm glad I did it. Your father would be proud of us both." Her mother squeezed Lily's hand. "Now go home to Adrian and that sweet boy. They need you more than I do tonight." Lily went home to the penthouse, where Marco was waiting with approximately 17 questions about court procedures and whether his nonna really made Victor Sterling look scared. Adrian was on a conference call with his lawyers, but ended it the moment he saw Lily's face. "Your mother was incredible," he said, pulling her into a hug. "She was terrifying," Marco added. "The news said she eviscerated him. What does eviscerated mean?" "It means she won," Lily said, ruffling his hair. The trial continued for another month. More witnesses, more evidence, more attacks from Sterling's lawyers. They questioned Lily's credibility, her motivations, her relationship with Adrian. They suggested the entire case was built on corporate espionage and personal revenge. But the victim testimony was too powerful, the pattern too clear, the evidence too damning. On a cold December afternoon, the jury came back after 3 days of deliberation, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Sterling's face went white. His lawyers immediately started talking about appeals, but everyone knew it was over. Lily sat next to Adrian and felt 10 years of anger finally start to drain away. It wasn't perfect justice. Her father was still dead. Her family's company was still gone. But Sterling would go to prison, his empire was destroyed, and the families he'd hurt had their voices heard. It was enough. After the verdict, reporters swarmed them outside the courthouse. Lily let Adrian handle most of it, but Rebecca Chen from the Times pulled her aside.
"How does it feel?" she asked. "Getting justice for your family?" Lily thought about her father, about the years she'd spent invisible and angry, about the moment she'd spoken up in that restaurant and changed everything. "It feels like I can finally breathe," she said honestly. The sentencing happened 2 months later. Victor Sterling got 15 years in federal prison. It wasn't life, but it was enough to ensure he'd never hurt another family. Lily didn't attend the sentencing. She'd said everything she needed to say during the trial. Instead, she spent that day at the Natural History Museum with Marco and Adrian, listening to an 8-year-old explain, for the 100th time, why Spinosaurus was objectively the coolest dinosaur. "You're not paying attention," Marco accused, tugging on Lily's sleeve. "I'm paying attention. You said something about tail vertebrae." "I said the neural spines on the tail vertebrae suggest greater swimming capability than previously thought. That's completely different." Marco looked exasperated in the way only children could. "Lily, this is important." "You're right. I'm sorry. Tell me again about the neural spines." Adrian caught her eye and smiled. They'd been through hell together: corporate warfare, trials, testimony, attacks from lawyers and the press. And now they were here, listening to dinosaur lectures in a museum on a random Tuesday, and it felt more real than anything else. That evening, after Marco was asleep, Adrian found Lily on the terrace again. It had become their spot, the place where they'd had their most important conversations. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small box. Lily's heart stopped. "Adrian, it's not what you think. Well, not yet anyway." He opened the box to reveal an antique key. "This is the key to my family's villa in Florence, the one my wife's family built 300 years ago." "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I want you to help me rebuild it. The villa, the foundation, the legacy." Adrian took her hand. "Sterling's assets are being liquidated. The court is distributing funds to his victims. Your family is getting a settlement. It's not everything you lost, but it's something." Lily's throat was tight. "How much?" "Enough to restore your family name. Enough to do something meaningful." Adrian squeezed her hand. "I'm creating a new foundation in Florence. One that preserves cultural heritage and supports artisans and protects the kind of family businesses Sterling destroyed. And I want you to run it." "Adrian, I can't." "You can. You're brilliant at seeing patterns, understanding systems, protecting what matters. You spent 10 years being invisible, but you were never meant for that. You were meant for this." He looked at her with those intense, dark eyes. "Come to Florence with me. Build something that lasts. Make your father's legacy mean something." Lily was crying now, unable to stop. "What about Marco? His school? His life as—" "Marco speaks Italian. He'll adapt. And he already told me he wants to go if you're coming with us." Adrian smiled. "My son is very invested in your presence in his life. He's been planning which dinosaur exhibits to visit in European museums." "This is insane." "Yes, but so was everything else we did. And it worked out." Lily looked at the key in her hand, an actual, physical representation of a future she'd never let herself imagine. A life where she wasn't surviving but thriving, where she used her mind for creation instead of destruction, where she built instead of fighting. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay, let's move to Florence. Let's build something beautiful. Let's give Marco a childhood full of art and history and terrible Italian pastries." Lily kissed Adrian. "Let's do all of it." Adrian pulled her closer. "For the record, when I give you a ring instead of a key, I expect a faster yes." "Is that a proposal?" "It's a warning. I'm terrible at romantic timing, remember?" Lily laughed, and for the first time in years it felt easy, natural, like something she deserved instead of something stolen. They moved to Florence 6 months later, in the middle of summer when the city was hot and crowded and absolutely perfect. The villa needed extensive restoration, but it was beautiful even in its decay. Marco immediately claimed a room with a view of the gardens,
and started planning where to build his dinosaur fossil collection. Lily's mother came to visit once she was strong enough for travel. She walked through the villa that had once belonged to the family who'd helped save Adrian's company. And she cried. "Your father would love this," she said, looking out at the Tuscan hills. "Building something good from all that pain." "I wish he could see it," Lily said. "He can. We carry them with us, the ones we've lost. In every choice we make that honors what they taught us." Her mother took her hand. "You fought back, ma chérie. You didn't let the monsters win. That's all he ever wanted for you." The foundation officially launched on a warm September evening. The event was held in the restored Villa Gardens, attended by art historians, preservation specialists, representatives from the families Sterling had destroyed, and journalists who'd covered the trial. Lily stood in front of everyone in a dress that didn't come from a thrift store, looking out at faces that saw her instead of looking through her, and introduced the Vail Foundation for Cultural Preservation and Family Enterprise. "This foundation exists because of people who fight back," she said. "People who refuse to let predators destroy what matters. People who believe that legacy and dignity and family history are worth protecting." She looked at where Adrian stood with Marco, both of them watching her with pride. "We can't undo the past. We can't bring back what was lost. But we can make sure it doesn't keep happening. We can protect the next generation of family businesses. We can preserve the cultural heritage that makes communities whole. We can fight back." Béché. The applause was loud, but what mattered more were the conversations afterward. Artisans who needed support, families who needed legal protection, communities who needed someone to care about preservation instead of profit. This was what Lily had been meant for. Not invisibility, not survival, but purpose. Later that night, after the guests had left and Marco was asleep and the villa was quiet, Adrian found Lily in the library. She was looking at a framed photo she'd hung on the wall, her grandfather, her father, and her mother standing in front of Moreau Textiles in its glory days. "They would be proud," Adrian said quietly. "I hope so." Lily leaned into him. "I spent so long being angry, fighting, surviving. I don't know how to just be happy." "Then we'll figure it out together, same way we figured out everything else." Adrian turned her to face him. Badly, with lots of mistakes, but eventually, successfully. "That's the worst life plan I've ever heard." "I'm consistent." He kissed her forehead. "I love you, Lily Moreau. Former waitress, current foundation director, future—" He pulled out a ring. An emerald set in antique gold that looked like it had history. "Future wife, if you will have me," Adrian finished. "And before you panic, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm not asking you to replace Elena or to be some ideal version of yourself. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, fierce and brilliant and occasionally terrifying, and to build this life with me and Marco." Lily looked at the ring, at Adrian, at the life they'd fought so hard to create. She thought about the invisible waitress who'd spoken up in a restaurant, about the angry daughter who'd finally gotten justice for her father, about the woman who'd learned that being seen was scarier than hiding, but infinitely more worthwhile. "Yes," she said, "to all of it. To you and Marco and this beautiful, complicated life, yes." Adrian slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her like they had all the time in the world, which they did now. Time to build instead of fight. Time to create instead of destroy. Time to finally stop running from happiness because they were scared it wouldn't last. The wedding happened the following spring in the Villa Gardens. It was small, just family and close friends. Marco served as best man and took the job very seriously, including giving a speech about how Lily was cool because she understood dinosaurs, and she made his papa smile again. Lily's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Vittoria looked satisfied, like she'd personally orchestrated the whole thing through sheer force of will. And when the priest, because it was Italy and certain traditions mattered, pronounced them married, Lily kissed her husband and felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't defined by what had been taken from her, but by what she'd built from the wreckage. 2 years later, Lily stood in the foundation offices reviewing grant applications while Marco, now 10 and even more obsessed with paleontology, did homework at her desk. He'd grown attached to working alongside her, claiming it helped him focus. Really, he just liked stealing her coffee and asking questions about everything. "Lily?" he said without looking up from his math problems. "Hmm? Are you happy?" The question surprised her. "Yes." "Why?" "Just checking. Papa says I should make sure because you work too much." Marco looked up with Adrian's intense eyes. "But you smile more than you used to, so I think you're okay." Lily crossed to him and ruffled his hair, which he pretended to hate. "I'm more than okay. I'm exactly where I want to be." "Good. Because Papa wants to take us to the dig site in Mongolia this summer, and I already told my teacher I'd bring back fossils, but I needed to make sure you'd come too." "Mongolia? For dinosaurs!" Marco looked at her like she was being deliberately dense. "Weren't you listening when I explained about the Gobi Desert formations?" "I must have missed that lecture." "It's fine. I'll explain again. So basically, the Gobi Desert has some of the best preserved Cretaceous fossils in the world, and there's this expedition that lets families participate." Lily listened to Marco enthusiastically describe their summer plans and felt something settle in her chest. This was family. Not perfect, not simple, but real and solid and hers. Adrian appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. "Should I be concerned that our son is planning our summer vacation without consulting us?" "He already consulted me, apparently," Lily said. "We're going to Mongolia." "For dinosaurs," Marco added helpfully. "Of course for dinosaurs." Adrian kissed Lily hello. "How was your day?" "Productive. We funded 3 new preservation projects and helped 2 family businesses fight hostile takeovers." Lily smiled. "Turns out, I'm good at this." "Turns out you were always good at it. You just needed the chance." Adrian looked at the papers on her desk. "Are those the applications from France?" "Yes, including one from Lyon, a textile manufacturer started by the granddaughter of someone Sterling destroyed. She's trying to rebuild." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to approve it?" "Already did. Sending the grant approval tomorrow." Lily met his eyes. "We can't undo the past, but we can help write better futures." That evening, after Marco was asleep and the villa was quiet, Lily and Adrian sat on the terrace where they'd had so many important conversations. The Tuscan countryside spread out below them, peaceful in the twilight. "Do you ever miss it?" Adrian asked. "New York, the fighting, the... No," Lily interrupted. "I don't miss being angry all the time. I don't miss surviving instead of living. I don't miss being invisible." She took his hand. "I miss my father. I miss what could have been. But this life we built, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even when Marco tries to drag us to Mongolia, especially then," Lily laughed. "Your son is exactly like you. Intense and passionate and completely incapable of doing anything halfway." "Our son," Adrian corrected gently. "You've been his mother for 3 years now, legally and actually." "Our son." The words still made Lily's chest tight. She'd never planned on being a mother, never thought she'd have the luxury of family. But here she was, married to a man she loved, raising a kid who asked too many questions about dinosaurs, running a foundation that actually mattered. "I spent so long thinking happiness was something other people got to have," Lily said quietly, "that I'd used up my chances when Sterling destroyed my family, that the best I could hope for was survival. And now? Now I know that fighting back doesn't mean you're stuck fighting forever, that revenge can turn into purpose, that being seen is worth the risk of being hurt." Lily looked at Adrian, "that sometimes the people who save you are the ones you saved first." Adrian pulled her close. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Tuscany. 2 people who'd fought monsters and won and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Somewhere in the villa, Marco was probably reading about dinosaurs instead of sleeping. In Queens, Lily's mother was probably telling the care facility staff stories about her daughter who ran an important foundation in Italy. In New York, families Sterling had tried to destroy were rebuilding with foundation support. And in a federal prison, Victor Sterling was learning that some battles you lose not because you weren't strong enough, but because you were fighting for the wrong things. The world kept turning. Predators kept trying to destroy what mattered. But there were also people who fought back. People who refused to stay invisible. People who built instead of just survived. Lily Moreau had been one of those people all along. She just needed to remember. And now, sitting on a terrace in Florence with her husband's arms around her and a future full of purpose ahead of her, she finally understood what her father would have wanted her to know all along: that surviving wasn't enough, that fighting back was necessary, but that living, really living, fully and messily and imperfectly, was the best revenge of all. The invisible waitress was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned that being seen meant being vulnerable, but it also meant being alive. And that was worth everything.